I've lived in Oregon my entire life, and I feel like a lot of people in our position as lifelong Oregonians go through a phase where we wonder if it's time to spread our wings and live somewhere else. And for me, that moment of reckoning came in 2006. I was 34 years old. I came out late in life, so I had barely just started dating, and it wasn't going well. I was working as a journalist in a dead-end job with an abusive boss. And on top of that, you might remember this is around the time when a lot of changes were happening in Portland, and I was sort of noticing this snarky hipster element moving into my city, and I don't know if I wanted to be here anymore. And so what better way to escape a bunch of snarky hipsters than to consider moving to Brooklyn? But in all seriousness, my dad grew up in Red Hook, and I'd only been to New York City a couple times as an adult, and I was kind of smitten. And I really thought, if I can make it there, I can make it anywhere. It's up to you, Jimmy. And so I was looking for any excuse to go back, and the excuse arrived in the form of a concert, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, where the Gorillaz were going to set up residency at the Apollo Theater in Harlem. And if you don't remember, the Gorillaz were this band that Damon Albarn from Blur formed, where when they perform live, they're a virtual band, so their animated counterparts are projected on a huge screen while the actual musicians perform in dark silhouette underneath. And they were going to recreate their entire album, complete with all the guest stars from that album. So Ike Turner, De La Soul, and the reason I wanted to go, two people who rarely tour the US, Nena Cherry and Sean Ryder from the Happy Mondays. So I was excited, and I wanted this to be a heightened experience, so I found a friend who could get me some homemade pot caramels. And she hooked me up. She warned me that since they're mostly butter, and since the pot is all in the butter, just be very careful and only take a little nibble at a time. So start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I was ready to go to New York and really see if I had what it takes to make it in the big city. Spoiler alert. No. My hostel was a dump. The last time I had been there, I'd stayed with friends, and they had since moved away, so I was alone and really feeling that sort of isolated experience in such a crowded city, people bumping into me everywhere. I went to a comedy show in Brooklyn that was terrible. I did see a couple of good Broadway shows and took some nice runs around Central Park, but in general, I was too anxious to even go clubbing and to meet other guys. And I even remember I went to the Whitney Biennial, and nothing there was speaking to me except for this one piece of art that still sticks with me to this day. And it said, "Today is the tomorrow you were worrying about yesterday." And so nothing was going right, but at least I had the concert and my pot caramel to get me through it. So I go to Harlem, and I take a big chunk out of it, and I'm waiting for the concert to start, and it's been delayed, and so the pot caramel isn't really kicking in, so I'm like taking another bite, and finally Damon Albarn comes out and he says, the one thing that makes the band different, the animation, isn't working, and so they're going to perform just in dark silhouette without any animation. So I'm like, still waiting for this thing to kick in. I'm like, this is kind of a disaster. And the concert was actually fine, although it was really probably the whitest crowd I've ever seen in the Apollo Theater, and very low energy. So like when Nena Cherry came out, I'm like, get up, this is so exciting. And anyway, so I ended up going to a diner afterwards to wait for my pot caramel to kick in and to at least try to finish the evening on a happy note. And the diner food was fine. It was recommended by my travel guide, but I'd been writing in my journal, and I'd noticed it had been about an hour since anybody had even checked on me. And so the service was just terrible. I heard like servers arguing with each other over tips and stuff. It was just, the culmination of all the things about New York that are high stress. And I was pissed. I was like, this is unacceptable. Everything's going wrong, and now I'm getting ignored by this server, and I gotta leave, and am I gonna have to go track him down to go pay? Fuck no. for the first time in my life at age 34, I'm gonna dine and dash. And so I go out on 10th Avenue and I start walking very slowly until I get out of the side of the diner, and then I start booking. And I'm like, I am alive. Finally, I'm doing all these rebellious things that I've been meaning to do, and I'm living life, and that's when the pot caramel finally kicked in. And so I'm like wasted on the streets of New York. I barely remember any of this. I did go to a palm reader to get my palm read. Maybe she'll have the answers for me. And I don't remember a thing she said. I ended up going back to my icky hostel and spending the entire night just drinking water and then having to go to the bathroom and then going back to bed and having to get up and go to, and it just was ended the entire weekend on yet another disastrous note. So even though I don't remember what that psychic told me, I doubt she could have predicted some of the things that ended up happening. I was able to leave that lousy job. I'm now in a very satisfying career as a reproductive rights activist. I've even gotten to help. I've even gotten to be a small part in helping to sue the president a couple times. I did finally start dating successfully, and my partner and I are about to celebrate 10 years together this Halloween. And you know what? I do want to wake up in a city that does sleep. I'm okay with being in Portland. It's totally fine. I'm happy here. Thank you.
Nigga, I be spiked out. I can trip a referee. Tell by my attitude that I'm